Hi, and welcome to the Control and Compound September update. We're going to talk what happened to Bitcoin, what's going on with the mortgage rates, what's going on with the markets, and more. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Control and Compound with Darren Mitchell. I'm your host, and joining me as always, Christina Wyatt. Christina, how you doing today?
Hey Darren, I am doing great. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Can't believe it's September update already. Where did the summer go?
That's what I'm thinking. It went a little too quick, in my opinion. I would take a little bit more summer, and I'm hopeful. September's usually pretty nice too. I feel like it kind of gets a little longer. I feel more summer in September these days, which is nice.
Yeah, and I mean, for us anyway, all the rain must be gone. So we had enough of it. So September hopefully is going to be a great month. So let's kick us off, starting with Bank of Canada. What's going on with the Bank of Canada? Another month, another rate increase?
Yeah, another month, another rate increase, and people didn't think it was going to happen, but it happened. So we went up another 25 basis points, up to 5% back on July 12th. So the people out there with those variable mortgages are definitely feeling it again this month. They're going to get another round of statements is going out to let people know, and yeah, so up 5, and we have another update coming September 6th. So we are in for another update. I don't know if it's another increase or not. Speculation. I really couldn't tell you these days. It could go
Who
one of two
knows?
ways.
Who knows? And then we saw mortgages accordingly went up. They're in the 5.5, 6% plus range for for a 5 year fixed, but like it might not sound like a lot, but it's tripled. The mortgage rates have tripled since March of 2020, March of 2022. Think of that. March of 2022 to now, the rates have tripled.
Yeah, that's impactful, especially for someone like Canadians are not like living paycheck to paycheck as it is, and you triple mortgage rates. That's going to be impactful, and for those trying to get into a house as well, right? Like that's not going to be easy to get those debt ratios in line and keep up with the pressure tests and everything else, right?
Yeah, and you think mortgage rates how impactful they are? I saw a great article about this guy in Toronto. Not a great article for him. Sorry, it was an interesting article. Um, this man in Toronto bought a house, bought a condo with a fixed payment. So these were mortgages that they were promising to fix your payment. So he started off at like a what was it, a 1.3 or a 1.6% variable mortgage, and then his payment would stay the same, but as the rate went up, they would increase the amortization period to 35 years, 40 years, 50 years, and people are getting their statements saying, "Oh, your 25-year mortgage is now a 40 or 50-year mortgage." And there was this guy in the paper in Toronto who bought a place, had a fixed rate mortgage, went from again 1.5 ballpark up to six point something. His amortization is now infinity. So his payment stayed the same, but he will never, ever, ever pay off his mortgage if he pays it for 100 years. It's an infinity mortgage. So again, not sustainable. Don't know what's going to happen to those products, but that's crazy. Infinite.
Yeah, getting a statement that has an infinity sign
Yeah.
on it, that's in the wrong.
So
That's nerve-wracking. Like that's
infinite
scary.
banking, good. Infinite mortgage, not so good.
Not so good. No. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's crazy to see that that's happening, but we're seeing it more and more, right? So we're seeing credit, not just these amortizations. Another place you see those things when those credit card statements when they're like, you'll have your credit card paid off in, I don't know, 27,000 years is where we're at with a lot of these things now. Yeah, it's not good. And more Canadians are kind of finding themselves there like that individual. They thought they had their dream spot, and now it's, not more like a nightmare spot, trying to get out of it, trying to stay in it. I know there was some couple stats here that Canadian average credit card is 3,900, which is up 11% from last year and up a lot in the past 2 years. So not only are people they're stretching themselves to be able to, pay for the necessities in life and their mortgages, but now they're putting these things on credit cards that are 22%, 25% interest rates that are now not getting paid off for 25 years. So there's a lot of interest payments being up. Equifax in Canada also said that there was we were an increase in 15.7% in delinquent payments on consumer debt the first half of the year. That's also quite alarming. So there are people that are, trying to cut it by taking out, I think in that same article, there's people that were taking out additional loans and lines of credit just to make their mortgage payments, right? So they're not even paying the mortgage, and now they've got an additional line of credit, and now they're defaulting on those. So we've talked about it for a while now, that word recession, right? Like we've heard it for quite some time. We're starting to see these things catch up with individuals, right? It's catching up with we've run out of those savings that we've kind of took in COVID, and people are starting to reach for that credit card again.
Yeah, I mean, even the banks I hear are starting to prep for the recession. I think you talked about that earlier.
Yeah, so the banks are. I'd read in that same article, they had said that three of the biggest banks across Canada have now put aside $2.5 billion for people to default. Like if the banks are prepping for recession, that's an indicator for me. And we haven't actually even seen the job loss yet, right? But on the same time, I'm reading through and I'm seeing that some of the banks are letting employees go and doing employee cuts. So they're giving employee cuts and they're holding on to cash and knowing that those are some pretty big indicators for me that we might see what we've all been kind of prepping and talking about for the last year or so.
Yeah, another credit card stat I found interesting is in the U.S., credit card debt, consumer credit card debt has now hit $1 trillion, like $1 trillion of credit card debt, and like people throw around numbers like million, billion, trillion, or whatever, but I saw this great thing about numbers by seconds. So a million seconds would take 12 days. All right, so that's 12 days for a million seconds. A billion seconds would take 31 years. A trillion seconds would take 31,688 years. So a trillion seconds is 31,688 years. So when governments throw around these numbers or industry throw around these numbers of $1 trillion, it is a significant number. So $1 trillion in credit card debt, crazy.
31 years of credit card debt. That's a lot. When you put it that way, though, it's really like you realize that this is not a little bit. When we talk about it, these are big numbers, and those are people. Like they're also people holding. It's just not a number. Like there's people out there that are holding that debt, which is it's scary. So in other news, we have our stock market updates. So the TSX is year to date up 5%. If we look at a 1 year return, though, it's pretty flat. So it hasn't done much in the last year. And so far in 2023, we're up that 5%. So it's better than last month. I think last month we were completely flat. So it has done a little bit. The S&P 500 is up about 14.75% year to date. Over the last year, though, that's more like 5% with those downturns we saw last year. So we are seeing it, we've still got that volatility, though. It's not really, like we've talked about with all of these things, the stock market doesn't like unknowns, and we don't know what's going to happen next with all these stats that we're kind of going through either. So we'll see how the stock market plays out there as well.
Yep. And not a great month for Bitcoin either. Bitcoin's around $26,000 right now. That's minus 10%, a little more than minus 10% for the month. Still up 57% year to date, but it was Elon Musk. Elon Musk drove Tesla down, or drove Bitcoin down last month. So Bitcoin bought $1.5 billion of Bitcoin in 2021. $1.5 billion. And they lost 204 million in 2022 on their crypto. So they lost 200 million. So Tesla actually made money last year, 64 million. But when you account for their crypto losses, they had a net loss of 140 million. So not surprisingly, as Bitcoin went up, they got to a point where Tesla said, okay, we're going to sell. They sold $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. Think of that. Tesla sold $1 billion worth of Bitcoin. Price dropped after that. Now, what does this mean? Bitcoin's, terrible, whatever. I think it goes back to Christina. Elon Musk is the wealthiest man in the world, and he understands if you want to make money, your best options are invest in yourself, business, and real estate. And I think he's just sticking to the business right now. Instead of trying to do something else, he's going to put that money back into Tesla and grow that business. So I'm not saying he read our book, not saying he read my book, but not surprisingly, wealthy business guy putting the money back into the business instead of trying to do the crypto.
Yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think he listened to our podcast. Like, there's no way he did. Must have heard that. So another stat or update on that's not as great, inflation. So they told us back in, and I just sharing numbers. I don't think these numbers really ring true, but back in June it was 2.8%. It was up in July to 3.3% is what they're calling for numbers. Now that is an increase. So since the carbon tax came in, we're actually up about 5.8%. So I read these numbers out like the Bank of Canada are looking at them, but if you go to the grocery store and you go out and you get gas, like you can see the true inflation numbers. I don't feel like they're 3%, but to each their own.
So like since the April increase in carbon tax, we've seen a increase in inflation of 5.8%. Now, that was the price increase across the country. In Atlantic Canada, we didn't start this carbon tax until July 1st, and we get absolutely hammered by it. 17 cents a liter for regular gas and 20 cents a liter for diesel. And I actually just looked up what diesel cost March of 2020. So March of 2020, diesel was running for around $1.05 a liter, and now it's $2 a liter. So every truck has almost doubled their fuel cost. Every farmer, every truck, every delivery, every 18-wheeler out there hauling the goods, the groceries, everything you buy at the store at the grocery store, all food, doubling of fuel costs. So there's no way you can double fuel costs and not drive up the price.
No, absolutely. And that's what we're seeing run down, to the grocery stores, to the restaurants, to all those places where you're going. Their stuff comes from a truck, and they're feeling that inflation too. So I will say, though, that when we look at these numbers, if there is creep, like the 2 and the 3, when we see those creep ups, we do end up seeing those Bank of Canada rates go up. So if they look back at August and they're saying that it's up to 4 and we were at 2.8 back in June, it's probably going to play into the decision that we're going to see on September 6th, right? So when we say those stats, it is something that they're keeping in mind to some degree when they're making those Bank of Canada decisions.
What about industry news? So industry news, the big thing on the general insurance side, we don't sell general insurance, just for information. Between 700 million and 1.5 billion will be paid out for wildfire claims for property and casualty this year. That's a big number.
Yeah, that's just year to date though, and these things are still think that it's still happening. We're still seeing those news reports and from Kelowna and the Yukon. Like it's scary to see the amount of damage that has already gone through. Now I know they've got the money there. They've already said they've got the money there to pay out all these claims, which is great. From insurance industry side, this is what they do. So thankfully for all those people with the insurance, they will have their homes recovered. But that's huge. And I know here in Nova Scotia, we had those floods that happened when we had a whole year's worth of rain come down in one day, and they're saying that just here we have about $170 million in damages in the area from those floods. And one thing that I've been hearing and seeing a lot on social media when you look at, the GoFundMe's and stuff, is that a lot of people did not have flood coverage. So a lot of people, and I just wanted to share this, and I'm not in general insurance like you said, but I went back and I immediately checked my, my coverage and did a double check because it's an extra So the typical insurance, and I looked it up, the typical home insurance policy isn't going to cover flooding. It's going to cover more things like a pipe busting or, bathtub overfilling, things like that. They're covering. If you want like that large flood protection or like sewer backup, that kind of stuff, you need to get an additional rider. We call them riders in our industry. I think it's a rider over there, a benefit, but you have to get it added. And then the other thing that happens is if they decide to make a change to your insurance, they'll just send out a letter and let you know that it's no longer covered. So I don't know about you, but I don't check paper mail as much anymore. And if it comes in, I'm like, whoop doop, and throw it out. But like, very important to be checking your home insurance statements and your just double check your coverage, because there's a lot of people that do not have the flood coverage in Nova Scotia. Like, I don't think, like, out of those claims, I bet there's a lot more damage that's not being covered in those claims for sure, just from what I've seen and heard out there from people's policies. So that's just a tip to go out there and do a double check. It never hurts, right?
Yeah, on that home insurance too, and like home insurance is becoming a significant cost. It was almost a throwaway before. It was all your different expenses. Home insurance was pretty reasonable, but I just got my home insurance renewal, and it's up I think over 30%. But you start thinking about why home insurance is up so much. Yes, the fires and the floods, but the other thing is what's it cost to replace your home today versus a few years ago, and those costs are up significantly. Plus, you had a lot of people do renovations and add decks and all kinds of fancy renovations during COVID to increase the value of their home. That's going to increase your home insurance. So, again, I encourage people, we're not home insurance people, we're not experts, we're not licensed, but what I did is, significantly increase my deductible on my home insurance to try to get the rate at a reasonable amount, because having one claim in home insurance in my life, the result is my rates doubled for a period of 5 years. So I would not be submitting a small claim for home insurance if it's going to impact your rates. So again, maybe look at your deductibles. But all right, so that's the industry news. What about controlling compound news? We're got some exciting stuff coming on this month. On September 12th, we're on Serena Homes, and we're sponsoring Serena's podcast for September. We're on live on Level Up with Iona Conciel on September 6th. And then in-person events. We're really excited about these two events. September 15th to 17th, we're going to be in Toronto for an in-person event. We're going to be presenting as part of the Ken Dunn Real Estate Investor Summit. You can check the link out in the description here. We got tickets available. It's going to be an amazing event with some amazing speakers. And then in October, we've got another live event. We're with the Everyday Investor Summit. Again, I'll be presenting at that. And there'll be 5 other real estate experts talking about different aspects of real estate with actionable items, how to get into pre-construction right away, how to do rent to own, bunch of other stuff we're going to talk about in that. So if you're looking for tickets for in-person events in Ontario, we've got one in September and one in October. So check those out.
It's going to be a busy September from the looks of it. The calendar is already full. So, but exciting and busy. So last month, just to recap, last month for our podcast, what came out on our podcast, we actually had Alona Koziel on our podcast, and she talked about how to start a real estate portfolio, which was great. Some great information and motivational too. She's very motivational. So if you haven't listened to that one, you definitely want to take a listen. We also had Becoming Your Own Banker, the Nelson Nash book review that we're kind of going through in each part. We went through part 2 there. Our second series that we're going through is Bitcoin, which has been very enlightening for me. And I've been learning a lot on this Bitcoin stuff, which is awesome. We had part 2. And then another great podcast that just came out recently was Does Infinite Banking Work in Canada? And that one's been getting some traction because it's a very good question. We've got some more information on that there as well. So if you've missed any of those podcasts, you want to make sure that you go back and check them out.
Yeah, and then coming up in September, we've got Mitt Perrin with Foundation Capital talking about REITs, real estate investment trusts. We've got Becoming Your Own Bank, another part there. Nelson's book. We've got Bitcoin Part 3. and we have whole life versus a TFSA. And this was some listeners asked for this. What's the difference, or can you compare a cash value whole life policy to a tax-free savings account? So we have a podcast coming up on that you'll want to check out. So that's the update for September. We hope you have an incredible fall, and we'll see you next month. Take care. Thanks for listening to this podcast. If you're listening on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, please leave us a 5-star review and subscribe. And if you want more information, check out our website, controllandcompound.com, and you can sign up for an education session with one of our wealth coaches.